had that glow. You know, the one you have when you meet the love of your life at a wedding in Hawaii, and he wants to make you his forever. The one you have when you know that nothing can go wrong at 36. Well, it only took 3 little words to dim my light. I felt like I was jumped in a game, given these colors, the color pink. I soon learned there was nothing pretty in pink. Managing the ebbs and flows after a breast cancer diagnosis was never ending. Our life together was just beginning, but we had no future in sight. I'm now standing here in my chemo glow, willing to share my moments, because I soon learned that the glow doesn't define me. I define the glow. Hi guys, welcome to Chemo Glow, where the glow doesn't define me, I define the glow. Thank you guys so much for waiting on our new podcast series. We have a new website out there, so make sure you check us out at chemoglow.com. And please, guys, check us out on YouTube. When you go to our YouTube page, I need you to make sure that you hit that subscribe button that's going on right there. Hit it. We are there. I want to make sure that everyone is listening and you know when we're coming on and you know what new podcasts we have or even some lives. You can also even check us out when we are doing our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify. And again, when we're live, we normally stream on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. And I'm working on the whole Twitter thing. This is all new to me. Social media is apparently where it's at, and I need to get with the program. So please make sure you check us out on YouTube. We're there. And if you want to share your glow, go to chemoglow@gmail.com. Make sure you please share, follow, and subscribe. Again, we're on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. We're everywhere. There's no reasons why you guys cannot find us or connect with us. I cannot wait to continue to do these podcasts and all the lives that we have coming up. I have so many people coming on that I need to just do a bunch of recordings so I can bring stuff to you weekly. But my recording today, this podcast today is called The Third Wheel, the Lymphedema series, because I want to bring my guests back for an actual live so you guys can ask questions. But right now, she's all mine. I get to chat with her. You guys get to listen and see what we're talking about when we talk about the third wheel. This guest is not just someone that I met. She is also a dear friend, and she knows about this third wheel. I've been calling the third wheel since I was diagnosed. I call it the third wheel because it goes everywhere with me. It determines what I wear, how I feel sometimes, what I'm able to do. So it's a constant reminder of what I've been through. And that was very hard for me to get through during treatment because no matter what, people always seen my third wheel, even though they didn't know how to say things or ask me questions. And some things were quite hurtful. And if you know anything about going through cancer, you know that sometimes you go into the mode where you just want to beat something up and you cannot beat up cancer. But when somebody says something real simple to you, you think you want to go ahead and pass out that butt whooping you've been waiting for. So today I have my guest that helps me manage this thing called the third wheel. I'm going to go ahead and bring her on. Miss Valerie, how you doing?
Hello.
Did you like my intro?
I loved it. It's so true.
It's so
appropriately
true.
named.
The third wheel. Like you were about to say, it's been a long time coming. Lymphedema is something that I live with and you work with, and you see different different degrees of lymphedema. And it wasn't until I really got to you that I knew what lymphedema really meant. I was already in treatment for it, but it was a deeper meaning when I came to you because I
Mhm.
had other different treatments that we were working on. But before we start talking about lymphedema, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do and where you work at, and then we'll dive into how you came about to work in this field.
Well, as you already introduced my name, Valerie, and I'm an occupational therapist. I went to Howard University, and throughout my years as an OT, I worked in various fields from orthopedics to some pediatrics, um, neurology, but it wasn't until I started working in kind of oncology and lymphedema that I found my calling. And
Okay.
I kind of came to lymphedema kind of in a roundabout way because it's not something that when I went to school for OT, we learned everything about anatomy, kinesiology, all the health sciences and cadavers, but the lymphatic system was kind of like that black hole where nobody
Hmm.
really talked about it. There wasn't a lot known about it, so subsequently we didn't learn a lot about it. So I basically came to a point in my career that I wanted to do something a little bit more hands-on because I'm a very hands-on person, and I believe in like a healing touch, and I wanted to
Yes.
see how I could combine my OT with healing touch, and
Hmm.
started doing some research and went to training to learn to be a lymphatic therapist through the Dr. Vodder School, and through that, I just started being introduced to more and more people that had lymphedema, and there was two different types, the primary and secondary. And the
Hmm.
secondary lymphedema, a lot of the patients that I had experienced cancer, and so I just started kind of, studying oncology also, and then
Hmm.
the two kind of melded pretty much.
And I was so lucky to meet you. Now, before you got on your journey with lymphedema and working with people, had you ever been in, like I call it the glow, introduced to cancer? How did cancer affect your life?
It wasn't until I was practicing. I think I was practicing for about at least 8 years,
Hmm.
and then I was diagnosed with breast cancer also.
Hmm.
Luckily, it was in the early stages, and I didn't have to have chemo, but I had radiation.
Hmm.
But I kind of saw it as just another um, education on my road
Yeah.
to becoming a lymphedema therapist, because you can read about it and you can treat it all day long, but until
Yeah.
you experience at least a part of it, and I'm not even trying to equate it to what a lot of my patients go through, because I had it very easy, but it's a lot easier to explain radiation fatigue,
Yeah.
or the pre-lymphedema symptoms that you get, because I use my hands, and I'm seeing like I was seeing like 8 patients a day, and it's all very physical because you're doing a lot of lymphatic massage. So, I myself had to wear a sleeve. I
Yeah.
myself had to do the things that I was expecting of my patients. And one day when I finished working, and towards the end of the week, my arm would start to get full because it would
Hmm.
start to, it's just, one of those things with lymphedema, repetitive stress, your body's working a lot harder normally because there's a little bit impairment to your lymphatic system. And I think I was going to a department store at the time, and I saw a patient of mine who had their arm all wrapped up and multiple layers of bandages, and she had to open up that heavy door. And it
Hmm.
just kind of, it struck home that, I wrap people and then they
Yeah.
leave the clinic. And a lot of times you don't see the day to day, even though, you empathize, but just seeing somebody having to open up a heavy door with that hard lymphedema, heavy lymphedema wrap, just like
Yeah.
that.
The
And it just
heavy.
like was a aha moment also.
Yeah.
And I'm here with my, my compression sleeve, which, I was feeling it, but that person felt it a lot more. So that was very eye opening.
Because it's truly a third wheel. And you talk about working with your hands,
Mm-hmm.
and you actually um, helped me when we were going through, and one day I came to your office, I was quite warm. I don't know if you remember this. And I kept saying, I'm not feeling well. And you were touching me and you was like, Regina, you're a little warm. And I'm like, it's chemotherapy, it's radiation. And you were like, no, it's something else. By your touch and your healing, you were like, you need to call your doctor right now. And they wanted me to go to the emergency room. And you said, no, you need to go to your doctor. They need to admit you. And I called my husband. You had to call my husband. I went to the emergency room, and sure enough, I had an infection.
I
And
remember
it was
that.
after one of my we had just did surgery, and we were doing reconstruction surgery, and I had an infection after the surgery, and I was so warm to the touch, and they admitted me right away. So you knowing, I could go to a massage therapist and them not really know what's going on, but you actually is like, no, it's something else. That healing power in your hands, knowing what's going on. That was so important. And I'm telling you, you played an important role in my healing process.
That's wonderful to hear. And I kind of
Yeah.
equate my hands to um, like a computer. You're constantly
Mm-hmm.
taking in information, and you're putting it somewhere. You know, whether you're trying to make an assessment, you're always making assessments,
Mm-hmm.
or kind of just feeling what needs to be done, what needs not to be done. But it's just
Yes.
a constant like information gathering and processing. But yeah, I remember that day.
Yeah, yeah. We've had a couple of days where you're like, I'm gonna go ahead and call your husband because
Exactly.
something something's not
Exactly.
right. And having the fact that my husband would come in, you would explain to him what's going on. I even have a video of you explaining to me. So I went home, I knew how to rap. And there's many tools that we use. Some work, some didn't work. But for people who have insurance, such as I had the insurance that we get everything, but there's a lot of people who don't have the insurance that can't get these gadgets, these devices, these big old things that cost so much money. How do you
Exactly.
work with that when you have someone who is in need of a sleeve or a device, and
Mm-hmm.
something so simple as the thing that helps you put on your garment? How do you help them out?
Well, I think it's helpful to just be involved in community resources. So a lot of it
Mm-hmm.
is case management, because you're right. Even people that have insurance
Mm-hmm.
have trouble paying for some of the supplies, because lymphedema is a very supply heavy
Yes.
diagnosis, as you know. And I believe in everybody having a toolbox, like a lymphedema toolbox. So
Yeah.
various ways. We are very expert in writing letters of medical necessity, because you always
Yes.
have to educate. And you talked about me educating your husband. So I believe knowledge is power. So the more education somebody has about their own self care, the more buy in you have to it. And it's not going to be successful unless you're educated to it and you're on board. So
Mm-hmm.
and then if your village is educated too, that's even another plus. So
Yeah.
that's always a imperative. Secondly, um, in educating just other healthcare providers,
Yeah.
because you really need to educate them for them to buy in, for them to maybe approve of funding, either be through charity or like community type of resources. So we educate other healthcare providers. And thirdly, working at where I work right now at Rex, we have something called an angel fund. So
Mm.
um, the angel fund would help patients that had cancer get equipment that they need, and that's been very helpful too. But
Because,
I,
like you said, even someone who has good insurance, it's still costly. I wear a glove and a sleeve.
mhm,
The glove can be up to like $400, $500, depending on the compression or the color I want,
mhm,
the degree of whatever. It is very costly. And then you have to buy a sleeve. And who just wants one glove and one sleeve?
exactly,
Because all you're
exactly,
doing is touching stuff. It's getting dirty. You
exactly,
got to pull it off. And then if
exactly.
you need a pad in the inside,
Mhm.
it's so many things that you have to have. But
And
coming into your office, when someone's
mhm.
coming into your office on a referral to you, what should they expect?
They should. first of all, if you're coming in for a lymphedema consult, you want to make
Mm-hmm.
sure you're seeing somebody who is a certified lymphedema therapist, number one.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Number two, the initial consultation, it's usually you would expect to get measured, like whatever body part is at risk of having lymphedema or suffering from lymphedema, you would be measured. You would measure, if it's arms, you would have somebody measure your unaffected arm and then your affected arm just to kind of compare to get a baseline. And this is if you think you have lymphedema or if you think you're at risk of getting lymphedema, because I always believe I like prevention. So
Mm-hmm.
I think anybody that is at risk of getting lymphedema, be it someone that's had like a breast cancer or had lymph nodes taken out, like a lymph node dissection, radiation, some chemotherapies, um, and that's just a very small proportion. But yeah, so you would expect to get, like I said, measured, number one, to educated to the gold standard for lymphedema treatment, which is
Yes.
called combined decongestive therapy or CDT, and it comprises it's involved with lymphedema education, skincare, compression devices, exercise. Sometimes that includes other modalities like what they call a basopneumatic compression pump,
Mm-hmm.
um, and just kind of knowing what could be in a lymphedema toolbox. But I think it's
Yeah.
all important not to scare anyone because not everybody needs it. And if you go on
Yeah.
the internet, and I just like to tell people to make sure you check your resources because a lot of times people believe in shock therapy.
Yeah.
So if you look up lymphedema, they're always going to show you the worst
The
possible
worst.
case scenario, and that's, I've been doing this for umpteen years, and I can tell you
Uh-huh.
how many times I've seen the worst possible scenario. So I would just say, guard your resources and basically expect to be educated, measured, and to just basically know what you can do to kind of prevent it from getting worse and what you can do to make it to get better, pretty much.
Because I found my lymphedema really was getting worse when I had radiation, after radiation,
Mm-hmm.
and I had cording.
Mm-hmm.
And I was actually being seen. She was doing a very good job, but she says you need a little bit more, and we don't offer it here. So I believe it was called cold laser.
Yes.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so they didn't have it there, but I like the fact that Teresa was like, but you can go here, and here is, this can help you here because I can't do it here. We don't have the
Mm-hmm.
resources, and we just don't have the technologies or the tool. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
cold laser, what the? I had no idea what I was walking into. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember coming to you, and even getting scheduled was difficult sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to
Mm-hmm.
find out, okay, I need to make sure I schedule ahead of time. I need to make sure I'm consistent, and I need to make sure that I'm good with the scheduler too. So when I walked in, it
That's
was
right.
like, "Hi guys, how you doing?" You have to have this great relationship because it starts at the front desk.
It
And I must
does.
say, the person at the front desk at Rex, they were great.
Yeah,
And they
they're perfect.
always made sure that nope, she wants Valerie. Okay, we're gonna put her in, we'll put her on this list. And that was so important. So when I came
Mm-hmm.
to you, I was coming in for cording and cold laser. Can you tell us a little bit about what cording and using? And I don't even know if they still use cold laser. It's been a
Mm-hmm.
while.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, courting is something that some people that have treatment for breast cancer or usually radiation, they develop, and the origins or the etiology is still kind of unknown, but it presents itself usually in the armpit or the what we call the axilla, and a lot of times it looks like the chords on a guitar. Pretty much, that's why they call it chording. A lot of times, if somebody raises their arm, you can see actual um, chords that kind of
Mm-hmm.
appear, and sometimes it can go from the armpit and they can travel either towards your wrist or they
Mm-hmm.
can travel down the side of your body, pretty much. But if you can imagine, like you, of course, you can imagine because you had it, but people listening, it's kind of like a tight rubber band that just does
Mm-hmm.
not want to give. So if you try to raise your arm up or you try to reach for something, it's like something is just holding you down pretty
Mm-hmm.
much. And a lot of times the treatment for it is gentle stretching because a a lot of times it's kind of like scar tissue, but it's not really
Mm-hmm.
scar tissue, but we treat it kind of like scar tissue.
Mm-hmm.
As far as if you want a rubber band to stretch, the best way to do it is just to do it gentle. You don't kind of
Mm-hmm.
pull on it really quick because you can pop it, you know. But so with cording, same thing. So a lot of times we use exercise. We do something called strumming. So if the cords are oriented vertically, we would go across horizontally to kind of disrupt the cord.
Mm-hmm.
Modalities that we would use would be a cold laser. And cold laser, it looks like a little thing that the doctors use to check your ear when
Mm-hmm.
they're examining your ear. And just meant a low level light, and it helps. It goes into your soft tissue, like a certain amount of millimeters, and it
Mm-hmm.
just helps to like speed up the metabolism there. So with the cold laser and with some manual therapy, it's been very effective at helping with cording. It helps with decreasing scar tissue
Mm-hmm.
also, and it's you know, pretty non-invasive. You know, it's just like I
Yeah.
said, it only goes in like a couple of millimeters, but luckily we had that at Rex, and it was very
It was
effective.
very helpful. Yeah, it was
Mm-hmm.
effective and helpful, even with
Mm-hmm.
stretching. Because when you explained to me, okay, it's like a guitar string, and then I could feel it. And
Mm-hmm.
then when you would work on it, I could feel it releasing.
Mm-hmm.
And even when I went back for reconstruction surgery, they kind of went in there and kind of cleaned it up a bit,
Mm-hmm.
and that helped. But like you said, the scar tissue on top of your arm swelling or different parts of your body swelling, because you deal with the arms, the legs, and what other areas for
You
lymphedema?
can basically have lymphedema in any part of your body. So
Okay.
sometimes we have patients that have had oral cancer, so they've had surgery for oral cancer, and they might have had radiation. So they might get swelling in their face or in
Mm-hmm.
their throat or in their what they call the submental area, which is like right underneath your chin. So we can
Mm-hmm.
do treatment for that. You know, arms. Some people get it just in their breast.
Mm-hmm.
If you're dealing with somebody that has like a lower extremity involvement or like gynecological cancers, and it could be in the legs
Mm-hmm.
or the ankle or the foot because of trauma. So really anywhere in the body. And then, you
Okay.
know, we have some people that are just born with it also. So I've
And
treated kids with it as well.
really,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
wow.
Had a child that was born with it, and it was in
Mm-hmm.
basically the majority of his body except his face, so in the arms and the legs, and in that case, you really involve the parents, and you know, you teach them how to do the treatment, like a lymphatic massage and
Mm-hmm.
aquatic therapy is something that we
Yes.
use also. So we use aquatic therapy with him, and he did well. He did
Well,
well.
that's good. That's
Mm-hmm.
good to hear, because lymphedema is, even though it's physical, it's also mental.
Definitely, definitely.
Definitely mentally. Every time I was wrapped, people thought, did my husband beat me up? Was I
Mm-hmm.
burnt bad?
Mm-hmm.
I remember us being on a trip, and one of his friends couldn't make it. So he
Mm-hmm.
took a picture of all of us and we sent it. And
Mm-hmm.
he said back, well, wow, what's wrong with your wife's arm? It's so
Mm-hmm.
big. And, me
Very
being
sensitive.
me, it
Mm-hmm.
was like, what in the world?
Mm-hmm.
And after that, I was like, I really don't want to deal. I was in a mood, but I had to change my mindset. But
Mm-hmm.
it's just like people will talk about it and be like, oh, okay. Like you're just supposed to be okay with it.
Exactly.
And like even figuring out what to wear, it'll pull on one side. You have
Mm-hmm.
to get your clothes a little bit bigger so they look ill-fitting, because you're trying to satisfy what looks right on the right, which would look right on the left. And then
Mm-hmm.
if you have lymphedema in your dominant hand, which an arm, which is me, it's very
Mm-hmm.
difficult to write things and do things like that. So it
Mm-hmm.
is a mental, physical, it impacts every part of your life. Just like you said, stretching and just getting a coffee cup
Mm-hmm.
or writing things for a long period of time, it affects the way you feel. So
Mm-hmm.
what are some suggestions that you might have for the audience when we're talking about the mental side of it?
I think that is kind of multifactorial, but I think
Mm-hmm.
depending on what calms certain people. So
Mm-hmm.
I know I'm a big proponent of yoga.
Mm-hmm.
So I think yoga definitely helps because it's all about getting yourself in a good headspace,
Mm-hmm.
pretty much. And if you have like, there's certain stages of lymphedema. So if you have like a stage 2 and beyond, then it's considered chronic.
Mm-hmm.
So it's chronic just like any other um, issue that somebody might have, like diabetes or hypertension. And I think just learning healthy coping mechanisms. And
Mm-hmm.
I think it's major to have a village. Number
Yeah.
one, people that support you, people that love you, people that
Mm-hmm.
understand you, people that let you curse, cry, do whatever you need to do just to get it out, because it's hard. Um, I think, physical fitness is good.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's good to control the things you can control. So,
Mm-hmm.
lymphedema, a lot of times, no matter, even in the best case scenarios, you might have flare ups, you might have exacerbations.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not a reflection on you, it's just the disease process. It's going to
Mm-hmm.
ebb and flow, but, usually it comes to like a pretty steady space. But I think just kind of being kind to yourself,
Mm-hmm.
be doing things that you enjoy doing in spite of, be it running, be
Yes.
it swimming, be it cooking, be it, like I said, yoga. Um, just, I think just finding good coping mechanisms and just finding out what makes you happy and what makes you feel like you have control and what makes
Yeah.
you, I wish, we were talking about dressing and somebody like you is beautiful and fashionable. I wish
Well,
that
thank you.
that's always been a goal. And I would love to have the money to start a clothing line,
Mm-hmm.
for people that are experiencing swelling in a body part,
Yeah.
because it's like you said, I know it's just something that should be enjoyable, like growing. Clothes shopping can
Yeah.
be very demoralizing. I can imagine,
It is,
and
and
it shouldn't
people.
have to be.
Yeah, and people are always saying, "Why don't you like shopping?" And I don't want to go
Mm-hmm.
into the whole spill of it that I have to
Mm-hmm.
match this for that, and then finally
Mm-hmm.
I got a tailor and going to them and having them do it. So, but it's a layer of things. But doing the
Mm-hmm.
things that you actually enjoy and having a village. My
Mm-hmm.
husband is always popping up with new things. Matter of fact, I meant to bring it in here. He It's a massager that you use for your neck.
Mm-hmm.
He now uses, he was like, try this for your lymphedema at night. It's on the top of your skin, and
Mm-hmm.
call Valerie and ask her what she thinks about
So
it.
good.
So I haven't called you to ask you what you thought about it, but it actually works when I have the tightness in my chest, because
Mm-hmm.
it's from my chest to my shoulders, and it all
Mm-hmm.
depends on what I was doing that day. And it
Mm-hmm.
can be something very light, or it could be hot outside,
Mm-hmm.
or when I used to travel a whole lot. I
Mm-hmm.
used to make sure I always set up my appointments after I traveled with
Right.
you so I can get that drainage. Now, when
Mm-hmm.
I come in to an appointment and we've gone through the intro of it, right? And I'm
Mm-hmm.
now here and you're about to start working on my lymphatic system. And I must say, you were the first person that staged my lymphedema or mentioned it. And then for me, that was another blow because I was like, stage two, what in the world? What is this? And the
Mm-hmm.
ebbs and flows, just like you said, the ebbs and flows, that's actually in my intro. I talk about the ebbs and flow of this journey that we're on.
Mm-hmm.
So now that I'm on your table and close on, close off, how does it work?
Yeah, so that this would be probably after your initial evaluation, or
Mm-hmm.
could be in conjunction with. But if we're dealing with the upper body lymphedema, then you would take your clothes off, because it's
Mm-hmm.
basically the treatment. It consists of skin contact, because your lymphatic system, what we're dealing with, the lymph vessels are underneath the skin and on top of
Mm-hmm.
the muscle. So we do something called manual lymphatic drainage. And I always equate it to kind of like a sink with a clog
Mm-hmm.
in it. So, because a lot of times the treatment starts at the neck, because that's where all the lymphatic fluid kind of ends up going towards your neck. And then from there, it goes into your subclavian vein, and it goes to your heart, pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
So, us as therapists, we're just helping the body do what it would do naturally. We're just kind of, pushing it along, kind of like brushing water off a porch, pretty much, just kind
Mm-hmm.
of helping it to go where it needs to go. Um, But we start the treatment, very light massage. We would start it at your neck because again, you want to open up the drain before you start bringing more water to the drain.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's different sequences that you do depending on where the blockage is, depending on where the surgery was, depending on where scar tissue is, and then you would just follow certain pathways. And it's kind of like if, usually if somebody has lymphedema because of having like breast cancer, they've had breast surgery, and they've had lymph nodes removed underneath their armpit, we would kind of do a detour because it's like a
Mm-hmm.
roadblock pretty much. So instead of having it go straight to where it normally would go to, we would just kind of move it over and find a different pathway to get to the terminus where it would normally end up.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's kind of like creating walking in a forest and making a new path. The more you walk on the forest, the more you walk on that new path, then everything would kind of flow towards that new path.
And afterwards, after you have that drainage done, and it's about what, about an hour?
It's usually an hour. Yeah, it's usually an hour. It could be more.
Mm-hmm.
In my
I had the longer
training,
sessions. Yeah.
that, and then my training. When you were just backtrack a little bit, when we were talking about, how to get supplies for people,
Mm-hmm.
and this whole um, system of medicine. The initial training and initial discovery of it was in Europe. So in
Mm.
Europe, they have socialized medicine. So the ideal treatments, a lot of times, you're not governed by insurance saying that you have Blue Cross Blue Shield or whatever insurance you have. I'm not calling out Blue Cross Blue Shield, but just using that as an example.
Yeah.
Usually they say you can have like, maybe 3 treatments a week for 60
Mm-hmm.
minutes. In the ideal
Wow.
setting, the way I was trained would be daily, daily for 2 weeks. And sometimes in Europe, it'd be twice a day for 2 weeks. And then it might be 3 times a week for 2 weeks. And then, it's a gradual. So that's the
Mm-hmm.
ideal situation. So, and then as far as your compression garments, you normally, because we would expect to see a reduction in your girth, the
Mm-hmm.
circumference of whatever we're treating, which means you would need new garments. And
Yeah.
usually you would get new garments every 3 to 6 months. So um, we would be we would do the treatment, like I said, for here in America for about an hour. And then if it's in the intensive phase, usually there's the intensive phase when you first start coming in and we're trying to decrease the fluid volume. So we would do the massage, and then after the massage, we want to keep the fluid from going back into the tissue. So because we were pushing it into the lymph vessel, so we would use compression. And
Mm-hmm.
compression just kind of keeps it from filling back up. That's when you would be bandaged with the picture that you showed, the arm bandage. Um, After a certain amount of time, once it decreases, and we'd be doing like periodic measurements, once it decreases, we would fit you for a compression garment. So part of your treatment would be just figuring out what is the end game, like what is going to be your lymphedema toolbox. Is it going to be a
Mm-hmm.
daytime compression garment only, daytime compression, nighttime compression? Sometimes it's a compression garment and a vasopneumatic compression pump, which is basically a pump that moves the fluid. It's like a air massage that you can do
Mm-hmm.
at home. It looks like those old fashioned snow suits that those from us from the
I
north used to wear.
I have one of those, and then I have a updated one now, and
Mm-hmm,
you
mm-hmm.
even helped me with a vest that I had.
Exactly, exactly.
I even had pads for the breast.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And you don't know how many wraps I have,
I
like
bet.
everywhere. The
I
wraps, and
bet.
even things where you can hook on the doorknob to help you
Mm-hmm,
put the garment on if you're by yourself,
mm-hmm.
or the handy dandy rubber gloves. You
Exactly.
taught me that the rubber
Mm-hmm,
glove, just pull it, push it up, and you can
mm-hmm,
get it on. And
mm-hmm.
I know after majority, almost 99% of my treatments with you, I had to go to the restroom
Yeah.
afterwards. And why is that?
Yeah, I always say if you have to go to the bathroom, if you have to jump off my table and
Yeah.
run to the bathroom, then I did my job.
Yeah. I already knew that. Okay, y'all gonna see me. I don't even care. I have to go to the bathroom. And I was
Exactly.
thankful for, I think it was number 12 or 13, whatever room we were in, it was
Yeah.
near the bathroom.
It's close. That's right.
The fact that I remember that and you knew that I would be one of those patients, like, I gotta go.
Exactly. And it's like I said, it means success because basically we're taking the fluid from what they call, without getting too medical, the
Hmm.
interstitial spaces. So the spaces, um, pushing it into your lymphatic vessels kind of direct it to your organs of excretion, being
Hmm.
your lungs and your kidneys. So if it's going to
Hmm.
your kidneys, then that means that we're moving fluid out of the tissue spaces, helping it get into your circulatory system and helping to expel it. So
Okay.
that's why you'd have to go to the bathroom.
Well, you were definitely doing something right.
Yeah.
Now, I think I remember you working on a project where you had to fly out and they were working on different surgeries for
Yes.
lymphedema. Is that
Yes.
still going on?
Yes.
Or
That was
what
really
or what did you
exciting.
do?
Yeah, so I went with a client and with another therapist. So we found out that they're at Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center, which is connected to Harvard in
Mhm.
Massachusetts, Boston, Massachusetts. There's um, surgeons, Dr. Segal, and like a handful of surgeons that are doing microscopic surgery. So they're surgeons that are very highly specialized, and they're doing lymphatic surgery. So up to now, there hasn't been a lot of success in lymphatic surgeries, but they have the equipment, they have the tools. So now they're operating on lymph vessels, and a lymph vessel to the naked eye is smaller than dental floss. So if you can just
Wow.
imagine having to operate on something like that, and you really need very high tech equipment to be even able to see, when you're in the surgical field. So um, make a long story short, they're doing very successful surgery to help lymphedema. And they're doing lymph node transplants, which is very successful
Mhm.
for a lot of clients. And they're doing something called a lymph venous connection. So they basically connect a lymph vessel to your a vein, and that kind of helps with the drainage also. A
Wow,
lymph
and
venous bypass.
you were able to see some of this while you were up there?
We were able to see, because it's a very kind of, they have to really evaluate each client to see
Mhm.
medically. So it took a week of testing with different medical professionals to even see if this client that I went with was a candidate.
Okay.
And they also do a psychological profile too, because you have to really buy in once again
Yeah.
to the whole treatment. And so yeah, I got to see the whole process, all the different testing that they do, and returned with her in the future, and she did have the surgery, and
Mhm.
it was very, very successful. And now we also
Wow.
have a doctor here in North Carolina that's doing it, Dr. Yemi at UNC.
What?
Yeah, and I've had a client of his that she had a lower extremity lymphedema, and hers was very successful as well.
I have been waiting for someone to come to North Carolina
Mm-hmm.
because that is something that I really wanna consider.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
I wanna make sure that I am physically in a good space, mentally in a good space for any more surgeries that I choose or not choose to do. But
Mm-hmm.
because being physically fit,
Mm-hmm.
mentally capable, those things are
Mm-hmm.
so important. And losing weight with lymphedema really does help.
Mm-hmm. It does
Um, I
help.
I found myself having to wear my sleeve less because I needed it as a choice versus I have to put this on every single day. Like I'm flying out in a few days and I have to put on a sleeve.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And when I fly out, it never fails. I go through, they have to use this little thing. There's like, we got to make sure there's no cocaine in your sleeve. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
if I take this off, somebody's going to help me put it back on,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Exactly.
And it is, I've always been stopped going through. And that's one of the things that I don't look forward to for flying. And when
Okay.
I land, I go straight into the room and I massage my chest. I start with the neck and I'm
Mhm.
doing this, and everybody's looking at me like, what's wrong with you? I said, I have to get this off of me if I'm going to enjoy the rest of my day.
Mhm.
And then I can choose whether or not for me to wear my sleeve, just because it might not go with the outfit. That's why I bought multiple ones.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
sometimes you want to be free from it.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
I was trying to put my sleeve on before we started, and I was like, I'm sweating, I'm gonna sweat my hair out.
Mhm.
Just try to
Mhm.
put it on.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
it is important to wear your sleeve, use your tools in your lymphatic toolbox, because they do help.
Exactly. And
It
I think the more tools you have, like you were
Oh
saying,
yeah.
like when you fly, because when you fly, it's all about pressure. So
Mm-hmm.
you have decreased atmospheric pressure in an
Mm-hmm.
airplane when you fly. And that's why even people that don't have lymphedema have a tendency to just kind of get a little bit more swollen. But when you have
Mm-hmm.
lymphedema, it's important to wear a sleeve or have some kind of compression on. Um, but you're right. I think a lot of times it's good to be able to have choice and control.
Mm-hmm.
So, you may not want to use your sleeve because your sleeve is purple and you want to wear pink
Yeah.
or whatever. Then
Yeah.
you do something else in your toolbox, like you do. Just do your massage or
Yeah.
elevate or use your pump.
Exactly.
But yeah, so it is important to have different tools.
I even have a little brush that again my honey got for me.
Mm-hmm,
It's
mm-hmm,
soft bristle. And
mm-hmm.
he was like, does this work? Tell Valerie about this one.
Yes.
Or the little they're not stones.
The gua
We
sha.
use Yeah.
Yes, those
So
are
I
wonderful.
have different sizes that I'll take with me, and I'll make sure I pack them in my carry-on, just in
Mm-hmm,
case when I have a layover, I can go ahead and start
mm-hmm,
using that. But just the different tools, people
mm-hmm.
don't understand it, but it's not meant for you to understand. It's about me feeling better about myself.
Exactly. And like you said, controlling what you can control. And your husband is on point with the brushing because brushing
Mhm.
helps.
Yeah.
And also with, you had mentioned earlier with vibration. So
Mhm.
vibration also helps to move lymphedema also.
Mhm.
So he's tell him yes, yes to both.
And what shouldn't you do with lymphedema? Like in the picture that I showed earlier, I definitely had every time I went into the hospital, they had to write no IV, no BP, no SQ, do not use. Like it's
Yeah.
important to know what you cannot do with lymphedema too.
Yeah, so you showed a picture of your arm. So if you have an
Mhm.
arm with lymphedema or any body part with lymphedema, we'll just talk about an arm or leg. You basically, it's already struggling, or I shouldn't say struggling, but it's working a little bit harder to
Mhm.
circulate the same amount of fluid. So you circulate about 2.5 liters of fluid a day in your body. Um, so if you have an impairment in the plumbing, so to speak, then
Mhm.
it's already working harder at rest to try to circulate that amount of fluid. So the things you don't want to do is cause any more insult to injury. So you don't want to do anything that causes constriction on the lymph vessels. So that's why they say no blood pressure cuffs, because that's, could be constricting. You don't want to do needle sticks on that arm because you don't want to introduce any kind of foreign bodies, because you might make yourself at risk of getting an infection. And your skin is your body's biggest defense against infection. So you want to avoid any any puncture wounds or any ill-fitting uh, jewelry, like anything that's going to be tight on your hand or your wrist. Um, if it's your legs, you don't want to have like tight fitting socks. So anything that's going to impede your circulation is you pretty
Mhm.
much want to avoid.
And I'm glad you mentioned jewelry. I have not wore my wedding ring in over
Mm-hmm.
10 years
Mm-hmm.
because of lymphedema.
Mm-hmm.
And the one time that I wore it around my neck, I lost it. Someone found it and didn't want to give it back to me.
Whoa. Oh,
That was a
yes.
whole police process to get that ring back. But that was a big thing for me, being, diagnosed while I was planning my wedding, having my ring, having to wear it, and then right after not wear it again, because not wear it on the left hand,
Mm-hmm.
right, again. And for me, I didn't want to wear it if I couldn't wear it on my left hand.
Exactly.
And that was a real thing. You can't wear jewelry. So if you're stuck with a watch on this arm and you want this on and you want a bracelet, you can't put the bracelet on the other arm because your arm will start to swell. You might not know it, but you're walking, your arm is down. So it really is that third wheel that I talk about. I have to consider all the things that I used to do with my left arm that I no longer can.
Mhm,
And that
mhm.
was a big thing. What about hot tubs? Being in heat.
So, in the beginning of um, my training, which was many
Mhm.
years ago, there was a list of things that you were not supposed to do. And again, I guess as you learn more, you can give better advice. So,
Mhm.
as the field of the lymphatic system and lymphedema grew, then the recommendations changed. So
Mm.
initially, it said there was a list, and I remember having to give this list to patients, and
Yeah, I remember the list.
I had a certain kind of feeling about it because I hate saying do not,
Yeah.
but the list, the wording was do not get into a hot tub.
Mhm.
Uh, that was one of them. And that has subsequently been changed to avoid prolonged exposure in a hot tub, which
Yes.
means that you can get into a hot tub, and usually they say 15, 20 minutes. Everybody's individual, but
Mhm.
15, 20 minutes, get in, then get out, see if it affects your extremity. If it's not, get back in again.
Yeah.
So there's again, it's avoiding, but you still can do. And I
So
think
I'm
again,
going to the hot springs
there you go.
because because I'm going to Colorado and
Hmm.
I ski and having a ball. And one of the things I want to do is go to the hot springs. But the
Hmm.
first thing I remember is that list. And then I also
Hmm.
remember that things have changed and it's based on the individual. And, 15 minutes, even with hot yoga, considering doing hot yoga, like you have to think about everything that would be normal for other people, but you have to be careful because of what the disease may or may not do that day, and it could be
Exactly.
different each time.
Exactly. And I think
Yeah.
it's again, it's I think the field's evolved enough to know
Hmm.
that not everybody's not like a cookbook, and not
Yes.
everybody with lymphedema is going to respond the same. So again, it's just I think education and being aware, and within that awareness, just test the waters,
Yeah,
so to
I
speak, and
plan on doing
see.
it.
There you go. I don't blame you. And you should. If you travel that
Because
far, you absolutely should.
yeah, shit. I already know I have my toolbox, I have my bags back, and I know I'm gonna have someone calling me. Are you okay? What's it looking like? Is everything good? Send me a picture. And I'm like, I am just fine. And the good
Hmm.
thing is the friends that I'm traveling with also know.
Exactly.
And so
Exactly.
they're helpful. And I feel comfortable about with the village that I'm gonna be with. So
Exactly.
that's definitely important. Well, what are you doing right now, Miss Valerie? What does it look like for you now?
As far as my career,
Before your career, and I know that you're working on something about yoga. I don't know if you want to
yes,
share.
yes, I
Um,
will. Again, I still work for UNC Rex, but I'm working in a home health setting.
okay.
So I see people in their homes, and I'm also working on a 500-hour yoga therapy certification.
Mm-hmm.
And my long-term goal with that is to work with patients that have lymphedema, patients that have other health issues, and this yoga is just another a system of medicine, pretty much. And I just see so many parallels to some of the yoga, even like some of the breathing things that we do in yoga.
Mm-hmm.
Are That's one of the exercises that we tell people to do with lymphedema, diaphragmatic breathing. Where does
Mm-hmm.
that come from? A lot of the things that we do in therapy come from a very old, 1,000-year-old system of medicine called yoga. So once
Mm-hmm.
I started seeing a lot of the parallels, I wanted to just dig in deeper. So I'm halfway through my certification, and
Yay.
yeah, I just kind of plan on using it just to facilitate, healing, help with coping. Um, it's just like the whole gambit, pretty much.
I
So that's
cannot
what I'm
wait
doing.
for that to happen
Yeah, it's
because I will
exciting.
be there.
Yes, definitely, definitely. Because I want to have, different things for, like I said, lymphedema, oncology, just different chronic conditions, even like diabetes, and there's just so many things that this can fit into and to help. And again, it's all about prevention. So I believe in prevention.
Prevention is the key, even from
Hmm.
early detection
Definitely.
to I believe that when I remember when I was right after surgery, they sent someone in and they asked me to lift up my arms and do like these kind of exercises, and they didn't really tell me why
Hmm.
and why I was doing it. And then all of a sudden it was like, okay, you have lymphedema, and that's why that we told you to do those things. But it wasn't really explained to me then.
Hmm.
What's the point? And I wish I would have had my arm measured before I had anything done. That way I
Hmm.
had a starting point and an end point. So every time
Hmm.
I went to have surgery on whatever, because I've had multiple surgeries and you've been there for most of them,
Hmm.
I wanted to see if there was a change. And
Hmm.
sometimes there was a change, significantly to the swelling and what needs to be done. And then we see the cording going down and just
Hmm.
different things happening. But that prevention piece of,
Hmm.
if you know radiation or removing lymph nodes is going to change how your body looks, behaves, and want to work with you, that we should be measured beforehand.
Exactly. That would be
Yeah.
the ideal situation.
Yeah.
Um, Again, I think a lot of things are insurance driven, and
Yeah.
a lot of times insurances only pay if there is a diagnosis. We're trying to
Mm-hmm.
prevent a diagnosis. So I think anyone that is going to have surgery for like a breast cancer related surgery or anything that involves dealing with your lymphatic system or having lymph nodes removed or having radiation, it's good to just, want a powerful tool in your own toolbox pre-surgery or pre-radiation is a like less than $5 tape measure, like a
Yep.
cloth tape measure. And a lot of times I'll tell people to just measure, it's like maybe 4 points of measurement right across your knuckles,
Mm-hmm.
your wrist, your elbow, and then if you draw a straight line from your armpit right out to your arm, measure that. And then just write it down and compare it, measure both sides pretty much. And you can do
Mm-hmm.
that. And not to be, scary about it, but just to have like some information.
Yeah.
And then maybe after your treatment, a couple of weeks, measure again. Maybe a couple of weeks later, measure again. And if you see no difference, then that's great. But if you do
Yeah.
see even a two, we do everything in centimeters. So even if you see a 2 centimeter difference, then you need to contact your physician to send you to a lymphedema therapist just to get some education.
Yeah. I
And even if
remember
you
going,
don't, it's still good. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off,
no,
but
no, go
it's
ahead.
even
Even if
good
you
just to
don't.
get that information still, even after.
Yeah. And I think that, and with my doctor, when I mentioned it, she was like, "Yeah, let me go ahead and send you here." And that doesn't
Mhm.
always happen. So you need to be an advocate. You need to know what's going on, and it's all about prevention. But sometimes you have so much going on that that's the
Exactly.
last thing that you're thinking about. But it's
Exactly.
something that it's like a buy-in, getting everybody to buy into what's really going on.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
Valerie, oh my goodness, this is going to be a two-part series, right?
That's fine with me.
We're doing the podcast, and then I know people are going to have questions. So we're definitely going to do a live in a couple of months where I have you and another professional on just to talk about lymphedema and
Hmm.
how can we prevent it from happening or taking care of
Hmm.
ourselves, and just a different toolbox. I love how you said you need a toolbox, and I
Hmm.
have a serious toolbox here. I
Yes, you
was
do.
gonna, because it's a podcast, I didn't bring it all out. But next time we meet, I'm gonna have all my
Hmm.
machines behind me. I
Hmm.
have
Hmm.
all the wraps that I have, all the different things that I have to make my life work. Because this
Hmm.
third wheel, I want it to be in the background, sit in the back seat while I continue to be in the front seat and I drive what's going on.
I
So,
hear you. I hear you.
Valerie, is there anything else you would like to say to our audience before we wrap up?
Well, I just would like to thank you for bringing this out of the shadows and into the
Yeah.
light, pretty much. Because again, it's all about education. Education, knowledge is power, and
Mm-hmm.
I think we should just keep on the journey of telling more people. And I think the more people that know, the more people are at decreased risk of having to get to a further stage in
Yeah.
lymphedema. So Thank you.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much, Valerie. Guys, if you want to know more about lymphedema, please see our website because I actually have the article that I did with you for Rex, and it has a lot of information on there. If you just go under our articles, you can see that. And stay away from Google when you're looking at stuff for lymphedema. Actually, contact professionals so they can tell you the right websites. I don't know if you have any websites or anything you could tell them if they're looking for more information on how to handle lymphedema.
Yes. So the first one that comes to mind is the National Lymphedema Network, or
Mm-hmm.
NLN. And that site has a plethora of information. And it's all vetted by, medical professionals. So it's not uh, overly, it's not like just using scare tactics pretty much. It's very good educational.
That's good. And if you guys want to email me at chemoglow@gmail.com, I will make sure that I get all of your questions answered. And Valerie, I want to thank you so much for being my guest today on my podcast. And I'm looking forward to you actually being on one of the lives. So thank you again.
Thanks for having me.
All right. I appreciate you. Well, guys, this has been a great show. I can't wait to have Miss Valerie on for one of our lives in a couple of months. But remember about this third wheel. You have to make sure you're an advocate, and it's all about prevention. And the ebbs and flows of a breast cancer diagnosis, again, is never ending, but we can also be the one to drive our treatment and how we deal with it. So I want to thank everybody for listening. Again, go to our website, check out our website, get some more information. And remember, the glow doesn't define me, I define the glow. If you got any questions, check us out. I appreciate you guys. Have a good one.